Hey Ringside crew, welcome to the internationally known Dudes at Ringside podcast. And now here's your host, Joe, Panther the Third.
Hello there, wrestling fans, and welcome to another episode of the internationally known Dudes at Ringside podcast. I'm Joe Panther the Third, and man, today you're in for a treat, fans, because I have a guest right here that will be so awesome. He's gonna bring the fire, bring everything else. Let's give a warm Dudes at Ringside welcome to my friend Troy. Welcome.
Shut up, Joe. I'll introduce myself. I am Troy Murdoch. I am the best new independent wrestler you're going to see on his show. All right, Joe, we can go ahead and get started, buddy.
Okay, no problem. So Troy, who's training you?
So I'll kind of start back at the beginning of everything. So I started training 2023 of June. Started over AML. Started training under Josh Gary. Don't know if that name rings a bell to you or not. He's a very, very good coach. So I trained with him till the end of the year of last year. And then for convenience reasons, I found another school 5 minutes from my house. And so now I train with Lodi. And for people who don't know who Lodi is, which you should, that's Lodi, the monster from the Ravens flock back in the WCW days. He's currently my trainer now. And then occasionally we get guest people who come in and help out with us, like Arn Anderson, Brock Anderson. They'll come and Brock will train in the ring with us, and Arn will give us some tips and help us out. Caprice Coleman, just a few names that most people probably know. They come in and help train out, but Lodi's my main trainer currently.
So what is it like to have like these random legends and people coming through like Arn Anderson? What does it feel like to see like guys that have been on that level all those years come down to like come in to work with you guys and give you guys advice? What does it feel like?
I'll be honest, when I first started in the business doing everything, because over at AML, when I trained over there with Josh, we had Ricky Morton show up one time. Now, granted, he didn't help us train or anything. He kind of just stopped by. And funny enough, people were mad at me because everybody was like freaking out that he had came, all the trainees and stuff. And I'm the only person who didn't realize who he was, just because now that he's a lot older, I just didn't recognize him. And so I just started talking to him got a handshake, took a photo with him and things like that. But I didn't know who he was. They were asking all the trainees to take a photo. So at the time, it just kind of felt normal. So then the more I kept working shows and meeting all these people, I'll be honest, to the point now of seeing like Lodi and Caprice Coleman and Arn and all them, for a lot of the people starting out training, it feels like, they start getting those butterflies. They're like, oh my God, I'm meeting my favorite wrestler in the world or whatever it is to them. To me, it just feels like another day in the office now. I don't really treat them any differently. Like I don't treat them as if they're some super famous person who you can't approach. It's honestly, if I have questions, I just go up to them, ask them whatever I need. They give me feedback and I try to work on it and fix it. I feel like once you get into the business after, at least for me, for a few months or so, the whole ideology of like being afraid of meeting all your favorite heroes and stuff like that kind of just dies down a little bit. But I will say having them there to help me train and do those things are amazing, because in what I've learned, so I've only been training with Lodi for 3.5 months now, and with what I've learned in 3.5 months, not only have I become a better wrestler in those 3.5 months just training with him, because he wrestled on TV, wrestled for WCW, so obviously he's going to be a great coach. But the 3 months that I've trained with him, not only has it made me such a better wrestler, but people are actually starting to enjoy watching me wrestle in the ring. They're watching me at other promotions. And although my social media is lacking and kind of showing everything that I do, which is what I'm trying to work on now, in the near future, everybody's going to be able to go like, hey, Lodi trained this guy in less than 6 months, and here he is working shows, and he's doing fantastic. So I will say, yeah, it's definitely something great to have, for sure.
So what kind of advice did Lodi give you that you've used so far in like your first few matches?
Well, really, so I had my first real match back in January, and that was when I had just met Lodi, and I only had 2 weeks to train with Lodi for that match. Granted, that one was going to be a squash match just because of the circumstances of who I was going against. they needed someone to fill in. And what I do is I work with Foothills Wrestling Alliance, FWA, down here in King, North Carolina. And what it is they've got their new talent initiative thing that they like to do. So they like to bring in people who are really green, because there's not a lot of promotions that will just let green guys come in and just try to practice and, work on their craft. So that's what they did. They go, hey, would you like to be in a squash match and, get some experience? So of course I said yes to that. Well, at the same time, I'm freaking out going on the inside, going like, I'm 100% not ready for this. Even if it is a squash match, I'm just not ready for this. And you putting me out here, I can't say it's going to be a great idea, but I'm not going to say no because it's an opportunity. So with those 2 weeks, I went straight to Lodi and I was like, hey, we got 2 weeks to work on this. Whatever we have to do, I'll train as much as I need to. I need to be prepared. And Lodi just kind of, it's funny. He always gives us like a little look and smirk. And he just kind of looked at me, he smiled, he goes, we'll get you ready. He goes, everything you learned back over at AML, forget it. He goes, because honestly, you need a lot of work. He goes, it looks like you've never trained before. And I was like, ooh, that's not a good sign. And then within 2 weeks, I was ready, did that match, and there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And he gave me a pretty good critiquing on that. He didn't really like the match, and I didn't like it either. And so fast forward to March, they skipped me in February just because they already had their bookings and pay-per-views ready. I got to go and have a match in March against a guy named Mickey Fulp. Me and him had a really good match. Everything went great. And so I got feedback from Lodi after that. And that's where I knew from all the stuff that Lodi had been telling me in training, within, like I say, 3 months, I've already became a wrestler who looks like I've been training for almost a full year. I finally started hitting my potential. And being with Lodi, all his advice really is quit being afraid of everything. Quit talking so much, because I do tend to talk a lot. And he goes, quit talking so much and just do what I say. And as long as you do that, we'll get you there. So I learned to shut up and just do what Lodi tells me to do. And here I am. And life's great right now.
Awesome. Let's go back. What was it like the first time you walked into that training facility? Because I know you trained at AML. Was like this time? What were you thinking this time when you're not at the AML training places? You're at this one. Like, what were you like? Were you scared? Were you excited? Like a little both?
So I wasn't really scared or nervous or anything. I was more excited than anything. And that's just because, so with Josh Gary over at AML, he always did the basics beginner class. And my shoot job, my actual job, just paired to go and train with him. And I didn't know Lodi School even existed at that time. And so I was still doing all beginner stuff just because I couldn't move up to Beer City Bruiser. I'm sure most of you guys know who that is. I just couldn't move up to his class because he was on Mondays and Wednesdays. And it's an hour and a half away from my house. And so my work schedule just wouldn't allow me to. So I was just like, it's time for me to go somewhere where I can get the advanced training and not have to worry about just doing basic stuff anymore. And so Lodi, what he does, I don't know if you know this or not, he holds his own like revival church group thing that he does. Mm-hmm. And I went to it just to kind of be able to check out his gym and see what he's about and things like that. And of course, so I attended his church revival, and that was a great service. But it gave me a good job to be able to see what the wrestling ring looks like, kind of see his place and all of that. And really after there, it was him and Nikita Koloff and Gunner. Who used to be Jackson Riker over in WWE. They were there, and so I got to talk to them a little bit and learn a little bit about Lodi's class and school and things. And Lodi was just super nice from the get-go. He goes, "Hey, if you want to come train with me, you start next week if you want to." Granted, I did hesitate, and I waited about another month and a half before I went back out there to Lodi's. But then it was just getting to the end of the year, and I knew like, hey, I want to start taking bookings. I want to start working. I'm almost a year into this, and I still feel like I don't know a lot. So I went over there. Again, that's just the best thing I've done for sure.
Awesome. So let's go a little bit further in. Like your first. What was it like in your very first match? Like, what was the momentum like? Like, did you have to like corner yourself and just like give yourself like a pep talk, or were you able to get yourself like in the moment of your very first match?
No, when I had my first match with FWA, I had a match before that, but it doesn't really count. It was more of a friends and family type of thing. That's why you don't hear me talking about it so much. It was just more practice thing. So if we're looking at my first real match, which was my squash match for FWA back in January, yeah, I'll be honest. When I met the guy I was going against, his name was Aaron Biggs. He's actually the champion of FWA right now. And so I had to go find him, and I talked to him a little bit. And honestly, one of the best, lightest workers I've ever been with. Granted, because I have been training with people, and I haven't had too many matches, but I have actually worked practice matches with other veterans and stuff like that. And out of anybody I've ever done, whether it's practicing or just being in the ring with, he's one of the lightest and safest wrestlers I've ever been in the ring with. So I do want to put him over on that aspect, because when you look at him, he's a very large guy. I don't know how much he weighs. He's pretty tall. He's just a very, very big guy. And so when he was talking about doing some of the moves that he wanted to do to me, I was freaking out, because I'm going, I haven't learned any of this in training. So whatever you're going to do, I have to hope that, you're taking care of me the whole time, because if you're asking me to do something, I don't have no idea what you're talking about. And he goes, don't worry about it. We'll make it super simple. We'll go in there. We'll kind of plan out our match. He goes, just listen to me call everything in the ring. He said, as long as you listen to me, he said, we'll make this work. He goes, since I know this is your first match, he goes, you're going to be super nervous, and I don't expect you to think about anything. Just listen and do as I say. And so that's what I did. I just listened to everything that he called in the ring. And by the time we got to the end of it and I had to do my heat with me being the heel, I was able to get a little heat in. Wasn't the greatest heat. Again, it's my first match, so I'm freaking out trying to figure out what to even do to him while I'm in there, panicking because I've got all the people watching me. And so I did pretty good on that, though. And then he just did a little splash. It was probably a good 5-minute match. He squashed me really quick. We took it home to the back, and that's actually where FWA wanted to rehire me, because they told me that was my chance at getting a booking with him. And the only thing that got me my booking with him is Aaron. So Aaron Biggs went to pick me up to give me a sumo slam. And for whatever reason, I guess I was off center, or he just didn't have me. As he picked me up, I slid on top of his head. So he stumbled and bent over. With him being a larger guy, this is what Ryan Bracken and Jennifer Bracken are the ones who own FWA. And what they told me, and there was a bunch of veterans in the back who were giving me applause for it, is there's guys with 5 to 10 years in the business who wouldn't have done what I did. And it was super simple. All it was is I fell on top of his head. And so instead of standing there and freezing like a popsicle and just waiting for him to readjust and pick me back up while the fans are looking at me going like, why is this guy waiting to get slammed? I just started beating down on him. I gave him a whole bunch of forearms to the back. And those forearms that I gave him to the back, it was only 1 or 2 of them. He picked me up, sumo slammed me, splashed, and took it home. And that was the end. But because of those forearms to the back of his back, Ryan and everybody else was like, hey, we really want to book you. There's guys who can't even think of doing that. They just stand there and wait. And they've been wrestling for years. He goes, even though you're green, he said, you're doing things and tweaking things that most people don't even remember to do. And honestly, I just have to pay literally all of that to Josh Gary and to Lodi, just from the training they have given me and all the advice that they've said to me is, in a real fight, would you sit there and stand if you've got the upper hand on somebody? You're just going to stand there and say, oh, well, let this guy readjust and start beating me up again. Nobody's going to do that. So, of course, you're going to beat down on him. So, yeah, I mean, to say I wasn't super nervous, and I was so nervous even when I was doing that, is an understatement. I almost puked in his face. He told me to hit the turnbuckle hard, so I hit the buckle. And when he came to give me a splat, or what was it? I forget what it was. Anyways, he was giving me a clothesline in the corner. That's what it was. He came, gave me a clothesline, and then he told me to do it one more time. Well, I got into the other corner, and I could just feel that I was getting ready to puke in his face, and I had to swallow it back down and everything. And it was rough, because that was my first experience ever being in front of that many people, and it wasn't a ton of people. It's probably like 40 or 50, which is still a pretty good sized amount of people for an independent promotion to have anyways. And so for me to be able to do that and get that experience, it was very nervous. But fast forward to March, and I had my second match with him. I had no more butterflies. I wasn't scared. I was talking to the fans. I was able to walk around. And it's like just 2 months of being with Lodi, my confidence is so high that I don't even freak out about anything anymore. If there's a wrestler who wants to do something in the ring, I can do anything they want to do now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. They got you out of your shell, but you almost threw up on the person. But still, you got yourself somebody out of your shell. Let's go into it about your Troy. Let's talk about your character, like your wrestling character. Like, how did you get all this idea? Let's talk about the history of Troy Murdoch.
Well, really, I didn't have a character. So we've got a group chat that we all have from the AML school. And so it's me and a bunch of the guys where we created our own Facebook group chat so we could talk about wrestling and do things together and stuff. And so what it is that group specifically, we help each other out with finding names, wrestling moves, just advice and stuff like that. Well, I kept pitching to the guys like, hey, they're wanting to book me in January and I still don't have a name. What do we do? And so a buddy of mine named David, he actually came up with the name Troy Martel. And the Martel part, even though it is more of a French thing, he goes, Martel means hammer. He goes, why don't you be Troy the Hammer Martel? And I was like, okay, that sounds really good. And so that's what we went with, was Troy the Hammer Martel. Well, as soon as I pitched it over to FWA, they were like, we'll do it this one time, but we don't like it. And I was like, hey, I don't blame them, because I didn't really like it either. I just needed it. And so I was talking to another guy, another promoter named J.M. Gallo for American Lucha Wrestling. And I'll be honest, he's the one who helped probably get me into FWA a lot more. He's been a very, very huge help to crafting my character, to crafting what I'm going to be doing in the ring, to helping me get a booking. Like, he's been great. He loved me from my, Genesis match, was the match I told you I'm not really talking about much. It's more of a family friendly type thing. But as soon as he watched me there, that's where he started liking me. And he's like, hey, I want to start using him. And he talked them into bringing me in on January, just even for that squash match. And so, anyways, doing all of that, that's where my character kind of started to develop, because they're like, hey, you look like Dick Murdoch. They're like, why don't you put your name as a Murdoch? That's where, if you want to keep getting booked here, we think you should change your name to Murdoch. And they didn't say in a rude way or anything. They just really go like, hey, you look like Dick Murdoch, and we think that could benefit you. So I had to go, I didn't know who he was. So I had to go Google who Dick Murdoch was. And in the process, I found out who Trevor Murdoch was. And I go, okay, well, I kind of look a little burly like these guys. I kind of see how I look like them and how it makes sense to have that last name. And so that's what we did. We came up with Troy Murdoch, and ever since it's been full selling, because honestly, just once I got the Troy Murdoch name over from FWA, I pitched it over to Lodi to get rid of Martel. Well, Lodi, Caprice Coleman, and I believe it was Arn Anderson was there that day, and Lodi had told him, like, hey, he's going to be a Murdoch because he looks like him. And I didn't really get to hear what Arn told Lodi. I know they were talking over in the corner, but I think Arn approved of it, or at least liked the idea or something like that. Just from a little bit that I could hear from the echoing. But then I know Lodi and Caprice Coleman and basically every other trainee in there who's been there, veteran or not, all said, yeah, you look like Dick Murdoch. That needs to be your last name. Now you just got to learn who Troy Murdoch is and learn to not copy somebody. And although you might look like them and have the features of them, who is Troy Murdoch? So then that goes into, at the time, I had no idea who that was. It was more of a, hey, we just came up with this. I got to figure out who this is. But then they're going, hey, we're going to throw you in a match in March, so you better figure out who it is. And so having my first real match as a character, and actually having this Troy Murdoch character have to display rage and anger and be able to cheat and just be the toxic heel that I want to be, I go, okay, well, I've got to channel that in the ring. And with Mickey Folk, that's who I was going against. And honestly, it's probably one of the best matches just because of him being, so I think he's been wrestling 8-10 years, something like that. So he's a veteran in his own sense, and he's been doing very well for himself. And so for me to be in the ring with him, honestly, that was a great experience too, because I listened to him call a little bit of stuff. I was able to start calling to him. And at the same time, we already planned out a lot of it. And so all we had to do was execute it. And now, granted, I forgot a couple parts in the match and I messed up a little bit, but he was able to help me get right back on point. We fixed it. Nobody would have even noticed except for me and him. And so we fixed it, got back to where we needed to be. Now, granted, it was another match that I had to lose, but it was a fantastic match. And the character that I displayed in that match was nothing but rage, anger. It was me talking, as much junk as I could to the crowd, giving them the arm and all that. Because Mickey's their hometown hero. He's from King, so they love Mickey. Like, that is their guy there. So they always cheer him when he comes out. So I had to make sure that I just buried him, and everything I did was talking crap to the ring every time I did something to them. The more they booed me, the more I wanted to hurt him, and I was letting them know, like, hey, the more you keep pissing me off, the more I'm going to let you know that I'm going to keep hurting your hometown hero. And so that's kind of where we got to.
Yeah, like it's so funny. Like, there's some people try to be one kind of character, the other ones try to be the other type of characters. But like for you, like when it comes to like a show, like the day of like a week of a show, is it more that you have to like get in contact with your opponent, or do you have to like do your training regimen more? What is it more for you?
So it was trying to like get a training regimen to go like, hey, how can I do all these set moves and remember how to do those, and then talk to a veteran. Well, as a green guy, you're not really the guy calling the match. You're going to listen to the guy who's been doing it for a while. That's just how the business works. So I don't really get in contact with anybody before the match. It's more of I see them the day of the show. I go, hey, what do you want to do? And then they kind of run it by me. I give a little bit of my feedback, letting them know, like, hey, I only know a select amount of things. I can run these things by you. Let's try these things out. I'm willing to try some of the newer stuff that I've learned and I'm pretty good at right now. If you want to let me do that, but if you want to scratch it, we can scratch that. But I always let the vet kind of pick what we're going to do, and then I just try to throw my 2 cents in there a little bit and see if it's anything that they want to roll. And as long as it turns out to be a good match and everything, everything goes over smooth, that's all I care about. I just want to make sure when the fans pay their money to be there, we're putting on a good show. Excuse me. And no matter how new I am at something, I'm going to try to still put on the best show for them, because at the end of the day, they're giving us 2 to 3 hours of their time. And even though my match might only be 5 to 10 minutes, I want to make sure it's the best 5 to 10 minutes that they have, so that they're not wasting their money while they're there.
Yeah, that's the most important part. Like, as a fan myself, I go to shows and I want to see the top action. I don't want to see them like, well, if something happens, it's nothing to do with anything that we did or they did. But yeah, so when it like that if you have to travel, do you like bring a lunch with you and like try to get whatever you could find before a show, or do you eat lunch and eat dinner after the show? Like, what is it like that process with the meals?
So really with the mills, luckily for FWA, they don't really start. Call time's always around 1, 2 o'clock or so, somewhere around there.
Wow.
It's been starting here about 1 o'clock. The show normally starts at 3:30, 4 o'clock. That's when all the fans are kind of panning in. Luckily for lunch part is FWA takes real good care of us. They feed us pizza. They feed us anything really back there. They keep everybody well fed. They bring in all the sports drinks, water bottles, stuff like that. So far as lunch, they kind of handle all of that. They are a really good promotion. They take care of all of their wrestlers. Honestly, they treat every wrestler who works for them, they treat them like family. So I have nothing but kind regards for them. They're probably the best people I've ever met. So lunch, they take care of that. Breakfast, that's more of a I just wake up at home, I cook some eggs, take a protein shake, chug that down, and then I'm right out the door, because it's about a 2-hour drive for me. So I drive up to King, get up there, do everything, put the ring together. We get the show set up and ready to go. Once that's done, I generally don't eat lunch. I might snack a little bit and have a slice of pizza or something that they have back there. But my problem is I don't want to get out in the ring and start running and doing all this cardio and doing all these different things, and then all of a sudden get acid reflux, or get uncomfortable, or feel like I got to puke and stuff like that. So I choose not to eat throughout the day besides breakfast. And then once the show's over, we're generally out of the building by 7:30, 8 o'clock. And then me and a bunch of the other guys, the other wrestlers, we just go out and we just go grab dinner somewhere together, eat dinner, and then we all separate and head home after that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, do you actually got like who would you say would be the one person that, like, if you had to travel with one person to do a show with you, like, who would be like your running buddy, like, to travel with, that you train with right now, if you have to travel with them?
That's actually a really good question. So some of the guys I'm training with over here at Lodi's, most of those guys or some of them are newer than me. They've only been training for a few weeks, so I can't say I'd be traveling with them. Not that I wouldn't hope to in the future. It's just more so when they learn, whenever they learn how to wrestle better and they start booking shows and stuff like that. So I'll probably bring this back to the AML school, the guys that I trained with over there, because they're also working shows currently. Probably some of my running buddies would be, there's a guy named Sexton Barker, honestly, one of my best friends. I would definitely travel and do things with him. David Stillman, that's another really good guy. Granted, he's not trying to make it in the business. He's in his 50s now. And so, but he's very fit, very athletic, very good at what he does. He's also one of my best friends. Hopefully one day you'll have them on the podcast as well, just because they're phenomenal wrestlers and they're very good. And those are the two guys I would definitely, as far as that I have trained with, I would hit the road with them anytime.
Like, that's a good thing that you have somebody that you trust, that that'll be with you, and then I'll be your running buddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
when it comes to your like gear, did you go to to some store and buy some tights, or did you know the person that does the embroideries and stuff like that, or?
So I have to laugh at that a little bit, just because. So when I got that first squash match booking over in January, I had nothing. I had no gear whatsoever. I take that back. I did have a singlet that I picked up at High Spots. I'm sure you've heard of High Spots. Who hasn't?
Yeah.
Over by High Spots, they gave me a singlet, and so I got it. Well, there's no embroidery on it. It's just a plain black singlet because I just needed something. And that's what I used in my Genesis match, just so that I could have something to wrestle in. Well, the problem is it has some wardrobe malfunctions. We'll say let's just say the front bottom area is not the greatest thing to have to look at with the way with the malfunction that's there. So I needed something to cover that up because obviously I can't go in front of a crowd with a bunch of people and kids wearing that with the malfunction that it was having. So, but I also just spent $100 on it. So I was like, well, how do I still wear the singlet and use it, but just cover it the bottom half? So then I actually started investing in some more gear. So I went and bought some wrestling boots. I went and got some wrestling tights. And I actually went and got some AMA knee pads because for any wrestler who's not using those knee pads, after I already had one injury in practice, I will never wrestle without knee pads ever again. That mat is very, very unforgiving. A lot of people don't understand what the mat is built out of. It is pretty much all wood that you're getting slammed.
Wood, and I've been told I watched them put together a ring one time at a show in Allentown, PA. It's like planks of wood with a mat over it. That's all.
That's all it is. It's not 2x4s. I can't think of the name of the wood right this minute, but it's the thickness of a 2x4. And so it goes all the way across the ring, and then your pad's probably an inch thick. And it's not like it's soft foam. It is very hard foam because it has to be in order for you to run across it and do things on it. So that foam is not very, forgiving either. It just allows for you not to break bones when you get slammed. And so, yeah, people don't understand that just taking a small bump can really, really hurt you. There's a lot of guys who come in, they take one bump in the ring and they're done. They quit. They don't even want to do it anymore. And so what happened to me is during training practice, I had a fellow trainee. It wasn't his fault. He didn't do anything wrong. It was actually probably more so my fault just because I was learning how to take the move. And I bent up into a cannonball. And when he went down, he gave me a face bump and my knee went straight through the mat. And I had a baseball size knot on top of my knee. And it took me month before I could get rid of it. Even to this day, my knee still hurts 24/7. I'm almost thinking that I need to really go see a doctor about it, and that's how bad it was. So now I tell any wrestler, if you don't have knee pads, don't get in the ring. I mean, it's their option to do that, but I will never ever get in the ring again without knee pads just because of that incident. So, but that's essentially how and why I went and got my gear. None of it has any lettering. There's no embroidery. There's nothing on there that actually says who my character is, and that's just more so. Since I've only been working for one promotion, I'm just kind of using what I got right now. In the next several months, I do plan to get custom gear. I've been reaching out to some people. A lot of people are just telling me they don't have time or they're too booked and things like that. So I'm trying to find somebody who will help me design something because I'll be honest, I'm not a super creative person, so I don't really know what type of designs to go with. So it's more so let's find a design, let's put it on the singlet, let's get it on some leggings, and let's create who Troy Murdoch is supposed to be, not just who is Troy Murdoch portraying because he has generic gear. That's really the difference.
Yeah, you don't want to be the generic gear, and you don't want to look like a WWE 2K character, like the start off what they're wearing, the tights and the boots.
Correct.
Yeah. So in closing, Troy, if you have any shows coming up, go ahead, tell us what's going on.
2 shows coming up. I've got April 13th with FWA again. They always do the second Saturday of every month. And so I'll be doing Breakthrough with them, and I'll be doing another match with Mickey Folk. Actually, me and you hopped on this podcast, I just did a promo video for it. So that'll be posted in my social media soon. So you guys can check all that out as well. If you're looking for me on Instagram or Facebook, it is Troy the Hammer Murdoch. Put an underscore in between the Troy and the Murdoch, and then you'll be able to find me on any of your social medias. And then on April 21st, I have another Genesis match. This will be the last AML Genesis match. Josh Gary, who normally hosts all those things, he's moved on to some other things in life right now. Honestly, I think he's got some really good opportunities, so he had to take those. But he didn't want to leave the guys hanging, so he's going to host one more Genesis show for them up in Winston-Salem. That'll be right around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock p.m., April 21st. But yeah, if anybody's interested in coming out there, the Genesis show is a free show, so anybody can come and just watch that show and just be there to have a good time. And then it is $10 to $15 for FWA to get in there and just come by and see some really good wrestling with some really good veterans.
Awesome. If there's any kids out there that wanted to get into the business, what kind of advice would you have for them?
just do it. Don't wait. Don't procrastinate. Don't be scared, because that's what I did. I'm 28 years old right now, and so I actually started when I was 20, and 20 or 21, somewhere around there. I can't quite remember. And I did it for about 3 months, and then I just kind of got a little lazy with it. And this was back when George South used to run his school out of the high spots, actual like where they sell the merchandise now. He used to run a wrestling school out of the back room back there. And so I did that for about 3 months or so, and then it was off and on. I'd pop in, but I wouldn't really wrestle. I wouldn't really do anything. And then I met my wife and started dating. And it was more of a like, all right, I'm not doing this anymore, because why do I want to get hurt? I want to grow a life, this and that. Well, over time, if it's something you really want to do, it's going to eat you alive until you finally go do it. So me and my wife, we got married, had kids, did all that. And I finally go, okay, I wish I would have stayed with it at 20, because I can't guarantee that I would be in WWE or something like that, but maybe I would have. Now here I am, 28, trying to relearn everything to do it all again. And now I'm doing this with the whole family, and that makes things 10 times harder. So if you're 15, 16, 17 years old and you want to do this, do it now while you have the time, before you grow a life for yourself, so that you can get as good as possible. And hopefully, before you have your family, you make it to WWE, TNA, NWA, any of those places like that. Go there, wrestle, do the independent scenes a little bit, and then have your family, and then that way you just grow a family while in the wrestling industry. That's the ideal way I see it going for a lot of the younger cats trying to get into this.
Awesome, Troy. I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I want to wish you nothing but the best of luck on your wrestling journey. I would love to have you come back later in the year so you can give me more of an update. And yeah, our Dudes at Ringside is the internationally known home of champions. Always sprinkle in the magic, like Mickey Mouse on top of the hill, on top of the rock. So, boot, there you go. It's your magic luck. You'll be getting a belt sooner or later. Promoters always, I'm like the mafia. If you don't give them the belt, your name's a little crushed. Well, I'm Joe Panther III.
And I'm Troy Murdoch. Look me up on, like I say, on all your social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm there. It is Troy _the_hammer Murdoch. Find me there and give me a follow. Thanks for having me on the show, Joe.
You're welcome. And we will catch you in the next one.